Hello, folks. How are you? Welcome to episode 124, sponsored by our friends at Maritime Madness. As I said, use the code FLA10 to save 10% and receive free shipping over $35 within Canada. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there here in Canada. It's a wonderful long weekend. Normally, I wouldn't do a podcast on a long weekend, but since I'm in quarantine for day number 13, we're banging them out every day this week. We've had a podcast and we're enjoying doing them. So thanks for tuning in. And again, happy Thanksgiving. And thanks to all the essential workers out there doing your thing, still keeping everybody safe and, keeping us COVID free. Let's get right into it here, folks. We have a fantastic episode lined up today. Very, very special guest. First of all, let's get right into it here. A Nova Scotia native, originally from Sydney, Nova Scotia, now living in Montreal, part of the Canadian national boxing team, training up there at Donnybrook Boxing Club. Almost dropped a verb there. Donnybrook Boxing Club in Montreal. Extremely talented lady. Really, she's. I want to kind of talk to her about why she kind of transitioned to Montreal, and we kind of talked a little bit off air about it. But I kind of want to. When we have so much special talent here in Nova Scotia, and it's important to see them go on to these next steps. So I want to kind of chat with her about that, and let's do it. Without further ado, Natali Fagan. How are you, Natali?
I'm great, thanks.
Awesome.
How are you?
Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
And happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
So you're up in Montreal again. We spoke about it a little bit off the air. You've been boxing for a long time. You've been involved in martial arts for a long time, but you're a black belt in karate as well. There's so much about
Forget
you.
about that sometimes.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
But it's like, why did you get into? I ask everybody on this podcast, why did you get into martial arts?
Oh my God. Whew. I don't know if you have all that time to unpack all of that. I would like to say that I always had interest in combat sports, at least since early teens. I was never someone interested in sport, and I was never very athletic. Sport, particularly team sports. I think that's the thing. I always had problems with social interactions and things like that, and people. But something about combat sports just seemed very different to me. I don't know if I liked the idea of fighting, even though I was always kind of the opposite of a aggressive person. I was bullied a lot in my life, and I kind of just was the person that was and didn't just let people kind of do that. But I think if I put it to a specific thing, you remember when the movie $1 Million Baby came out?
Yeah, certainly.
Well, there's the actual real life boxer in that movie, Lucia Riker, who at the time, until I think the early 2000s, was and this was before women's amateur boxing got to the level that it was, because until we were allowed in the Olympics, which was only 2012, we also were not included in these major multi-sport tournaments. And even now, it's only the Olympic weight classes. Mm-hmm. So but at the time, she was this amazing person, and as an athlete and also as a person, which it wasn't necessarily that movie, but it made me aware of this athlete. And I remember I watched this documentary that was about her in this training camp that she was at with all these big professional boxers at the time, like James Toney and people like that. It was called Shadow Boxers, and it just was about her process as an athlete and as a person. And I just really kind of identified with, she was a practicing Buddhist. Not that I am affiliated with any religion, but just kind of the philosophies of that and how she was as a person. And then she was this
awesome,
just they called her, I think, Lady Tyson, or the most dangerous woman on the planet. The way she fought was just so aggressive, and the fact that she could be these two different people, this very, I think, a good humanitarian and role model, and it's kind of a peaceful person. But she also had this other side, the business side, that was very aggressive, and just people say. Still, I think now it's maybe more like Clarissa Shields as who's the best woman boxer in the world. But, she very much was at the time considered the best in the world, and still is. And so that kind of got me interested in the sport of boxing because of women, for sure. Mm-hmm. And same thing with mixed martial arts. I got more interested in MMA and I guess the UFC I know UFC is obviously not MMA, but it's the
Yeah,
biggest organization. When they started to allow women in it, like I was more actively supportive of watching that because I'm a woman and I fight, and I like to watch other women fight and support that. And not that I'm more interested in it than men. It's definitely,
well, it's a path. It's important. Like, you know, it's super important because exactly what you said, you know, like you like watching it because it's other females, and God knows what it's going to do for girls who don't fight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, not everyone has to fight or be involved in combat sports, but especially for women and people, just the confidence that it gives you. And I think everyone should be able to defend themselves or live in a way that they, you know, believe that they are worthy and confident enough to present that attitude that, like, you know, don't fuck with me.
I love that. Good for you. I love that. And I want, it's so important to, like, I wanted to ask you about, like, your nickname, you know, Wonder Woman. It's kind of like you kind of hinted on that, and about two different personalities. And it's kind of interesting because that you need that. Like, not everybody, like a lot of fighters kind of put out that persona, like whatever. But like, I think that a lot of people can really relate to the person who's like down to earth, like you're saying, like a humble, just professional kind of, and then you get in the ring and you fight your ass off and you're a badass. Like, people love that.
Yeah. I mean, with myself, I try to rationalize it I don't always perform well in a sport environment. I've had many times where, you know, issues that I have in life have been a hindrance to performance in sport. But when I perform really well, it's when I'm really focused, you know, very focused in what I'm doing. And usually, you know, in life, large groups of people and a lot of like sensory things really, or any kind of, I'm not a confrontational person. And a lot of times, you know, those are the kind of interactions with other people that I've always had problems with and anxiety with. And I'm like, well, what is it about combat sport? Like, it's the most, you know, what's the word that I just used? It's the most, confrontational you can get, but I tried to rationalize it myself. It's a controlled environment to a degree, and you know what's going to happen. For me, there's the kind of control in that setting that you don't get in life. It's like, you know, okay, I know I'm fighting at this time, I'm fighting this person, you know, they fight this way, you know, there's only certain things that can happen, and, you know, you can lose, you can get hurt. Yeah. But like in life, there's so many other uncontrollable factors. You can't control what people are going to do or say. You know, you also can't literally fight them to get them, you know, to literally beat them into doing, you know, fighting your fight or whatever. So
that's super interesting to look
at. That's how I kind of
about it that way.
Yeah, no, that's like recently, that's kind of how I rationalize, you know, I think what I like so much about fighting and about, combat sport and boxing in particular.
Wow, that's very powerful. I like that a lot, because when you think about it that way, like, you know, you're driving to the gym, you have no idea what can happen. Like, you know what I mean? These little things. And then when you get into a fight, it's like you're set in this, and the only thing that can happen is you can lose and you can get hurt. And that's really it. That's your limitation. So it's if you look at that attitude where it's like that comforting factor that way, that's cool. Well, that's the way I took it.
And there's a certain set of rules. And to a degree, it's like if you know who the judges are and you know who the ref are, you have an idea of how they ref things and how they score things. So it's also an element of like, okay, I can kind of control what's going on here to the best of my ability.
Interesting. What do you think about judging? And now that we're on that topic a little bit, you know, it's being a high level competitor. You know, it's one of those. Is it as bad in boxing as it is in MMA? Yeah. We don't have to talk about it.
I mean, I'm not an expert on it. Let's just say I've never won a fight I didn't deserve, but I definitely have had fights where everyone except the judges thought I won. So I don't know, but I mean, I like to be realistic about myself and my abilities. It's also like, well, they literally have a different perspective, like the way they are sitting and watching, as opposed to someone who is like watching from above or watching from whatever. So
tough job for sure.
I have, and I mean, fortunately, all the fights that I think that, you know, were bad decisions, they were like club shows. So it's like at the end of the day, it matters, but it doesn't matter as much as if it's, in a tournament, like an international tournament, or for a national championship or a world championship.
Yeah. Yeah. Well put.
Yeah, but I mean, professional boxing, it's a whole different thing because it's like some money is on the line, right? And I'm guilty. I'm really bad with. I need to keep up with watching sport, particularly like boxing, particularly in my own sport. I don't know what it's been this last year. I just I think the first fights that I watched in like almost a year was like when Adesanya fought Paulo Costa.
Costa,
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
I just media in general, right? People are, I don't know. You get on there and it's just like a lot of negativity, right? So if you can kind of put yourself away from all of it,
yeah,
maybe I don't know if that's. I know a lot of people who just kind of were like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, I like social media or media.
Just in general, like they've kind of shut themselves off about kind of what's like following things, like because like it might be better now, but like in the midst of everything, it was like following everything went back to COVID.
Yeah,
like you couldn't just get away from it, so they just shut themselves away from like TV, social media, everything. And they're just like, no.
Yeah, I do that a bit. Like I read a lot. I like books, and comic books and stuff because it's nice when they have pictures too.
Yeah. Skip a page.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, I try to follow not necessarily COVID related, but a lot of things that are going on in Canada. Things that I particularly care about.
Environmental.
Environmental, no. For me, it's more of the kind of the social justice, and I mean, I can unpack a lot of stuff. I don't necessarily think maybe you want to get into all that stuff on this show, but yeah, just what my area of what I care about is a lot of things that are going on right now in terms of like Indigenous rights and the fight right now in Nova Scotia for treaty rights that are being greatly disrespected.
If you have 5 minutes and you want to speak about it, by all means. Like,
no, I mean, I don't think by any means I'm the most educated person out there. I just know that a lot of people that I know and care about are affected by this, and even if they weren't, it's something that we should all care about. Yeah.
Very well said. And I think that's an important thing, like I talk to a lot of people on these podcasts about, how big of an, like if you're an amateur athlete with one fight or you're a coach with 6 UFC athletes, world champions, everybody has a role to play and everybody has a following and people look up to you. So at the end of the day, like you have, this ability to represent what is right. And that's kind of what I take out of everything here that's going on in the world. It's like nobody's trying to change you, but everybody's trying to just be like, listen, do the right thing for once. Like, period. No more fucking around. Let's do the right thing.
Yeah, but it's interesting we say do the right thing when people are acting in these ways that we consider, to be wrong based on our morality. Well, to them, they're doing the right thing. They're doing what they think, is right based on what their particular worldview happens to be, right? But sometimes it's the job of the rest of society to say, well, this is not what we all decided upon is right because that's how societies work. That's how humanity works. It's like freedom of speech means you cannot be, like usually you can't have legal repression against you, but that doesn't stop the rest of the world from saying you're an asshole. This is just not right.
Yeah, it's true. It's you're I don't know. I guess we could talk about this forever. It's like one of those wormholes you could go down. But
no, you don't have enough time with me.
No, let's go back to the national boxing program. You left Nova Scotia and you went up to Montreal, and the whole the experience so far, and it's obviously the right place to be for what you're looking for in your career at this time, I assume.
Yeah. I mean, I very much miss, like I would live in Halifax again in a heartbeat if I could. I've told Bridget that, and she's like, come back. And I'm like, I know I'll always have a home there and a place there. And I still very much feel like part of their team, and they still very much make me feel like that. And
awesome.
which is great. And that's what I need out of a training environment, definitely to thrive. And I feel like that's what I have, just that made the national team in 2019, and I was like, I think a month or so afterwards, I was emailed by our national team director and offered like carding, but like, which is basically you get monthly funding from the government, you know, for sport. But they changed our sport back in 2016, where to get that funding, you have to relocate to the centralized national team program, so we had the Olympics in Montreal in like 1976, and the Olympic facility, there's a bunch of sports that are centralized there. I think boxing was one of the last ones to be added to it, like in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, for like almost 2 years, I was doing their training program with them. And my funding didn't get renewed after the first year because, you know, they didn't really say, well, this is just kind of an intro. Your first year on the national team, it doesn't get renewed because I've been honestly on the B team since I've been on the national team. I'm pretty honest about about that. I didn't have the opportunity in the last 2 years to fight for a spot on the A team. When I went in 2018, I literally had a gold medal handed to me because no one else in 75 kilos showed up. I had a makeup bout with the woman in the weight class above me because she also didn't have anyone to compete with, but it's like literally, I was like, here you go. And I don't know. It was bittersweet because literally I went 3 years in a row and lost. I got a bronze and I got a silver, and then I was handed a gold, and I was like, this is not what I meant when I said I wanted to. Like, you want to earn it, right? Mm-hmm. And then the next year I fought one other person. So I actually technically fought, you know, nice. and regained my spot. But I definitely am. I mean, I think I'm still on the national team. I haven't heard anything from anyone in a while. The whole COVID thing, it's like, I don't know. And rightfully so. I mean, the Olympic, the people that have been selected for the Olympic team are kind of the priority. I kind of missed the mark on that. I moved back to 69 kilos, which is what I used to fight at. And now I'm trying to get on the national team at that weight. So I'm kind of starting over again anyways, which is okay. I feel like there's more competition at 69 kilos. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I felt small at 75. Like I went to some international tournaments and I'm like, they're big. Yeah. I mean, I'm like 5'10". I'm not like super, you know, small, but yeah. And then other people were saying, well, you know, the talent is when you go to the lighter weight classes or the ones kind of in the middle, the talent pool is a little deeper. So it's more difficult. But I'm like, that's okay. I like to.
Well, that's it. You know, if you're going to compete, you know, like if you're going to train and you show up and there's one person or in 2 years to compete, you know, you got to work it out. So the bracket, you know, with the most opportunities where you're going to go, I guess. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, most tournaments that I went to, not with the national team, this is before I made the national team. I did the ringside tournament, mm-hmm. The one they do in they stopped doing it, but the one they did in Kansas City every year. And I went there and I just got one fight, but I won it. Same mm-hmm. thing with the tournament, like in Ireland, those things like you don't know until you get there if you're going to have a fight at all. So it's kind of a bit of a.
Is it get better though? Like I know Jiu-Jitsu used to be like that too, where you wouldn't really know, you know, back in the day who was competing, but now everything's online and you kind of know your bracket a little bit in advance. Is it getting better?
Yeah. I mean, there's always people that don't show up. Like, of course, obviously it's like one person, but with the 2 like tournaments I did with the national team, I knew there was going to be at least a few fights. Yeah, I remember my first tournament I did with the national team was in Poland. And I drew Russia right away. And I mean, I didn't win. I'll tell you that right now. He ended up winning gold. So like, I feel a little better. I was like, well, you know, I got knocked out of not literally knocked out, but I got put out of the tournament right away. But like, she won it. So, you know.
Well, experience, you know, like the thing is, so what's your goals, you know, moving on in the future? We got, you know, and we got about 5 minutes left here. I want to cover, you know, your future goals. Will you come back here, you think? You know, obviously travel, you said was a big part of your life. Will you come back here, stick it out in Montreal?
I'm here in Montreal for the foreseeable future, I would like,
Nice.
I had plans, to continue in amateur boxing, at least for the next year or so. COVID kind of frigged things up, but my goal was to make 69 kilos, make on the national team, be able to be a team. I never really said, oh, I want to be an Olympian. I want to go to the Olympics. I was just trying to do as well as I can. But I find the last few years I've started to make more solid plans, which is probably something I should have been doing for a while. And, I'd like to be ranked in the world for sure. I think I'd rather be a world champion, go to a world championship. At least they happen a little more often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little more than 4 years. Who knows what's going to happen with the Olympics too? I hear they're going to go next year, but who knows? With
and I feel really bad for, some people that I was training with at the INS, were the A team counterpart to myself. She's ranked 5th in the world. She's an amazing athlete, and honestly, I think, probably Team Canada's best chance at a medal at the Olympics in a long time. Right. And, I'll say that, as even though, she's the A team to my B team counterpart, but it doesn't erase the fact that she's she's a really good athlete. Yeah. And all these people who you see, who I've been training with for 2 years, and you see how they've been preparing. And it's I was training with them, being a sparring partner when they were preparing for the Olympic qualifiers for the Americas. And then we got the notice that it was canceled because of COVID, and then everything shut down here. And it's just to see people's kind of, it's you're all ready, and then it's no, you can't do it. I mean, it was frustrating for me, experiencing them go through that. So I could only imagine how they felt.
Competitive athletes, it's a hard pill to swallow right now all over the world. And, in the States, it's a little bit different right now. So our next guest, we'll talk to him a little bit about that. Nick Gullo, he's down in California.
Yeah, the States are different. I know Team Boxing USA is actually at a tournament in Spain right now. So, I mean, that's the decision of their organization. Yeah. People that actually put that event on, but Canada obviously has taken the stance of, we're not participating in these things right now. We feel like it's not responsible or whatever. I mean,
yeah, that's another podcast altogether too, man. Frustrating from a promoter side of view. Last question for you, for up and coming athletes, boys and girls, men and women out here in the East Coast, any advice for them dealing with what we're dealing with right now, how they can get through it a little bit easier?
Oh, geez. I'm not really good at advice. How they
Me either. That's why I asked.
Oh God, you hit me with a hard one here. I don't know. Just do it.
Hey, there you go.
I mean, if it's, I don't believe in it's meant to be. I think that, things happen because you make them happen or you don't make them happen. But just if you want it, you're going to work for it, regardless of the obstacles that come in front of you, right? I've had a lot of shit that's kind of happened over the years, but boxing was that constant of no, I'm still going to make it work, because this is the one thing that is that constant in my life, and I love, and I kind of need it because it kind of
keeps you
helps with everything out. Yeah. So
yeah, I hear you. Good for you. Well, it's important, just do it, right? Get off the couch. Run.
I mean, that's easy for me to say, I mean, I'm not the most advantaged person in the world, but I'm also not the most disadvantaged, and I'm, fairly able-bodied and all the stuff, although I've had my issues with mental health things over the years, and I still do, but I mean, find a way to do it, support from other people, support from your community, support from I don't know, even just yourself. Your own
that's an important one.
Your own will to want to do it, which
that's probably the most important one. I know I struggle with that a lot, competing in life and stuff. Be nice to yourself. It's important to be nice and kind to others, but geez, be nice to yourself first.
I get told that one a lot. Just you get kind of used to the self-depreciating humor and the whatever, and just being modest, or not modest, but that's the totally wrong word. Humble. Don't take. I'm humble. I'm just. I don't know. I'd like to say realistic, and that I'm. It's good to not be comfortable with where you're at,
Totally.
to always kind of want something something more, you know.
Yeah,
And I've never been comfortable a day in my life, so
that's good. Well, that means you're
hopefully
growing, right?
I'm gonna
You're
have
growing,
more progress.
Who wants to be comfortable? That's it. I want to be better every day. So, well, thank you so much, Natali, for joining us. Hopefully this is not the last time we'll get you on. We'd love to have you, maybe if you can get out here or something, we'll get you involved in our events or something like that.
I want to come back to definitely the mainland area sometime soon,
Awesome.
just this kind of all made that a little harder.
Yeah, true enough. Well, be safe up in Montreal, and lots of love to you guys, and we'll speak to you very soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Have
Awesome.
a good one.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. Until next time. Awesome, fantastic guest. We'll catch up with her again next time, but probably in the next, I don't know, probably next 6 months or so, we're going to kind of turn up some things on the other side. So I'm really excited to chat with her about that. And when I say the other side, we're talking about boxing. So anyway, folks, let's get into it here with our next guest. Again, this episode brought to you by Maritime Madness. Check them out online, maritimemadness.com. 30 different flavors of hot sauces and rubs. Use the code FLA10 and burn your face off. Next guest, Nick the Tooth, Nick Gullo, black belt masters world champion, artist. We'll call him an artist. He's a pioneer in jiu-jitsu, one of these guys who's been involved, I don't know. He's been involved in a lot of different aspects of jiu-jitsu. He's been on TV with Dana. He's, like I said, he's a masters world champion. He trains out of AOJ with the guys out there. And, just a kind of a guy who, he has a podcast. He's an author. He's involved in a lot of different things. But now he's living the van life and still doing his thing in jiu-jitsu. So I want to kind of chat with him about this. And anyway, let's bring him on. Mr. Nick the Tooth, how are you? Oh, we got you. Your mic isn't connected. That's interesting. One sec. Yeah, sorry, Nick. Stand by here, folks. No, I'm going to kick you out. We'll bring you right back. See if we can get him back in here, folks. This has been an incredibly interview to book, and it's super embarrassing when people can't get on here. StreamYard, you're embarrassing me today. Natali had issues too, so I'm going to write you a nasty email. Complain. Nick's been pretty patient with us, so my apologies, Nick. Beautiful day here in Nova Scotia, folks, for anybody who's tuning in. I can't tell. I haven't been outside in 12 days, so I don't know how cold it is or how warm it is. Nothing like live TV, folks. Sometimes it's a beautiful thing when you're it's nice when you have a producer or somebody, working on the other end to help you, like our live shows where you can't notice this kind of stuff. But when it's just you, in your closet doing a podcast and things go wrong, you kind of have to talk to the computer and you don't really know what to talk. No, I'm just joking. Let's get in. We'll talk about our next event here, folks, coming up on October 24th. October 24th, our next event. Nick might have just said, fuck it. Yeah. Oh, there he is. Let's see if we can bring him back on here.
Do it.
There you go. How are you, sir?
What's going on, brother? How you doing? I was going to put on the ring light, but I think that kind of took all the power from the mic. So we're going to have to do a really shadowy, war type of a feel.
No worries, man. Thank you so much for joining us. Pretty honored to have you on, man. It's been a while. I've been bugging your ass to get you on here. So thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, man. How's it going? How is Nova Scotia right now?
You know what? We're ranked as the second safest place in the world right now, they're saying.
No kidding.
We have 3 cases here.
So are you guys training all the time or what?
Yeah. Our clubs are
still
fully
on lockdown?
open. No, we're open. Unlimited numbers.
Wow, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty sweet. What about you? You're in California, right?
It's an absolute disaster. So
much like Florida.
It's in California they've taken well, I think Florida's a different ball game all to itself, man. I mean, Florida, if you're on social media enough, then you're aware of this concept called Florida man, and it's basically all the idiots. Anything idiotic that anybody does is typically can be attributed to someone from Florida. So and I could say that because I'm from Florida. So
yes, that's right. Down in where you're down,
it's a disaster. But I'm in Orange County right here. In Orange County, everything's just open. I mean, you guys were kind of talking about it on the last with the last guest that I heard that in America we just don't care. I mean, I think it's just the individualism of that's just kind of embedded in the DNA of the country. It's got to be. I don't know what else to attribute it to.
Well, it's like up here, like it's you're exactly right. Like people just don't fuck around. Like people are like, if you're going to change a toll down there, like that's what my dad always laughed. We would drive down to wherever the States, and my dad would always be like, let me tell you, if they put a toll up here, people would go nuts. But in Canada, people are like, well, okay, it's expensive, but I guess I'll pay it. But down there, it's like, no, fuck that. Not a chance.
Yeah, but you know what, though? I don't want to get too political, but it's the reason that America's infrastructure is shit. It's third world country. We have some of the worst airports. We have some of the worst roads. We have our education system since the 80s, there's been a movement of decreasing taxes on the most wealthy. And, you know, the flip side of that is we're going to cut spending and forget spending. We're going to cut investment into infrastructure and education. And so we're suffering under 50 years of that. So, I mean, that's just, it's
the good old political times, man. Yeah. Well, let's stay away from that, I guess.
Yeah. And you know what, though? It's hard when, you know, a global pandemic has become so, at least in America, it's become so political. It shouldn't be a political issue. It's a medical issue. And it's just that, you know, on in America, politicians use social wedge issues to divide the country and divide the middle class. And so that they can enact, you know, typically tax, you know, breaks for the wealthy. And, you know, it sucks. My daughter right now. Yeah. Our daughter right now lives in London, and she cannot believe how ridiculous it is here. I mean, people don't give a shit. What's that?
Like, what's the state tax out there now?
No, I'm talking about she can't believe that people are actually protesting wearing masks. It's like, it doesn't cost you anything to wear a mask. What's wrong with you? Just put on the fucking mask. What's wrong with you? You know what I mean? I
couldn't agree more.
It doesn't make any sense. It's just idiotic. But it's the same thing. It's like, that's what happens in America every 4 years. We either fight about gay rights or gay marriage or burning the flag or some other stupid issue that doesn't really affect many people, you know. But yet it becomes a wedge issue, and it's political. Now it's wearing masks. You're not going to die from wearing a mask. I don't care what kind of nonsense, you know. Anyways, no more politics. That's it for me.
There you go. Do segment 2. Let's get into wrestling as a child. You know, I want to talk to you about that and fucking politics, man. It always makes its way in somehow.
That's okay. What did you want to ask me?
Well, here, because you wrestled as a kid, and now you obviously you transitioned into jiu-jitsu, and here, like in Canada, well, I shouldn't say in Canada, there's wrestling out here in the East Coast, but it's pretty limited compared to what it is obviously in the States. Like, it's like hockey is obviously the big thing here, like everywhere else in Canada. But did it help you so much? Like, do you go into hard wrestling rooms? Have you went into hard wrestling rooms since you started jiu-jitsu?
Oh,
yeah. Enjoy that still? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Nice. No, I hate it. I hate wrestling. But yeah, every so often I'll train with a UFC fighter, just because so many guys are around my weight and in the UFC, and I just happen to know some of them. Like Dominic Cruz was just down at Studio 540, and
nice.
He's my size, and Cheeto Vera, and so sometimes I'll just be a body for these guys, where I know enough wrestling to where I can at least, like, I'll typically, Daryl Christensen is a MMA coach, and he's also a wrestler. He worked with Chael Sonnen and worked with Cheeto Bear, works with Dominic Cruz and TJ Dillashaw. And, sometimes I'll just jump in, but it's brutal, man. Wrestling is so, I would rather play on my back, where instead of, it's just so hard on the body, man. Especially as you get older. I'm older, so it's like, but I like it. Yeah, it's instrumental to my progress throughout jiu-jitsu. I mean, there's no question about it, because what happens is that, wrestling is a grappling art, and so is jiu-jitsu, right? And so I didn't start jiu-jitsu until I was 43 years old.
Yeah.
And
wow.
Yeah, and so for me, when I first got into it, and I've talked about this at length, but I started it at Art of Jiu-Jitsu, and when I started, I really didn't want to do gi. I was like, I first saw gi jiu-jitsu, and I first put on a gi. I think it was probably like 1999, and I was with Dana underneath the UFC corporate headquarters before they even bought the UFC. But in that building, and John Lewis, who had worked with BJ Penn, was a black belt, and he was there, and it was just like an introduction. And I was like, man, I'm not down for this. I don't want to be in a gi. And so when I first started at Art of Jiu-Jitsu, I only wanted to do no gi, and it was just a really great time, kind of like a golden era for Art of Jiu-Jitsu, because at that point the brothers were in their competitive primes, Hoffa and Gi. And there were not many, and there weren't many people who did who trained no-gi. So there were like 8 to 10 of us at the most, and Hoffa was teaching and getting ready for ADC.
Wow.
And so he needed people to fight with, to spar with. And so from day one, I started sparring with Hoffa. But you have to understand that, given my wrestling, I could at least offer him some resistance and some looks for ADCC. By no means, could I at that point offer him, even now, much more than that. But
that's crazy though.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I would spar with him every day. So it was
one introduction.
Yeah, it was. It really was. So by the time, I think by the time December rolled around, or November, I was like, I just eat at Nogi Worlds, and they didn't have a white belt division, and I was a white belt, so I just entered as the blue belt, and I was like, all right, I want to compete, and so I entered that competition and won, and it was a cool way to start, competition and competing and all that. And then I got my blue belt, and I jumped into, Hoffa was like, you got to start training in the gi. This, you have to do both. You got to do gi and no gi. And so from that point on, I really fell in love with the gi. But I do no gi still to this day. And to your question, I think it's a really good question. Is where a wrestling background helped me, or helps really anybody, is you already have this IQ of anatomy and grappling. And so when you encounter a technique, you just pick it up much faster. Not because you're smarter, not because you're better, but because, by that point, I already had 10 years, a decade of grappling. And so, yes, submissions were different. Yes, all of this was different, but it wasn't that different. And to this day, I still use my wrestling all the time. Not even straight wrestling, but just that basis, that
mentality.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I meant by it. Like, you have that kind of that foundation, and because you see these wrestlers, and even like here in Nova Scotia, like there's not a shit ton of high level wrestlers. There's probably, there's a lot in the Nova Scotia and like the provincial team and that kind of stuff in university, but not a lot come to the clubs, I would say. And the ones that do, they pick it up so quick and just run with it and win tournaments. Like as soon as they start like training, right? Like they're
it's not even, you can't compare, someone who is especially when you get into the level, I didn't wrestle in college, but when you get into the level of Division I wrestling, and you come into no-gi, I mean, you're a purple belt immediately. Yeah. If I could spend time with a Division I wrestler, give me 4 weeks and teach him some defense and some basic offense, and that guy is going to be smoking people. So yeah.
Do you coach much?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I do. I teach it fairly often now, so especially since I got my black belt. But I just happen, whenever I travel all the time, like you said, van life. But even before then, I was always traveling. I was traveling with the USC. So I had this, there's that old school jujitsu thing where you don't train at other gyms. That never applied to me just because I was traveling so much and I needed to get in. I immediately, once I started training, I was trying to train at least 5-6 days a week.
Nah.
And so, yeah. And so once so now, whenever I go into a gym, typically guys know me and they're like, you're a black belt. Will you teach something? And so now I've just been teaching quite a bit.
Nice. That's good. But
yeah, it's fun.
I don't mind teaching
it.
boys. $100, no problem. I don't mind.
I don't charge, but
the tip jars at the door. That's a good idea.
Wash my van. I'm like, hey man, I'll teach someone, get someone out there to wash my van.
Can I park here tonight? That's so.
Oh man, I've been staying. Yeah. So the background on that was, our daughter got married a few years ago, and she moved to London, and so my wife and I are just living in Newport, and we were just thinking, what do we do now? We're young. I mean, we had our daughter when we were really young, and so we were just like, what do we do? And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy a van. And so we had looked at Sprinter vans, Mercedes Sprinter vans for like a year, and I ended up buying one like 3 weeks before the pandemic, and started working on it. And
so smart.
Yeah, serendipity, man. I had nothing to do with smart. I just got lucky. And so I started working on that, and once COVID hit, I just was like hardcore about it. And so then once she finished school, she's a school teacher, first grade school teacher. I was like, baby, let's go, let's get in the van. And so we did, and we just traveled all the way up the coast of California. We just got on the one and just traveled all the way up to the Canadian border, where they wouldn't let us in. We're like, no. You guys are idiots in America. We don't want any part of that madness.
They wouldn't let you at all, eh? They closed them.
No, they don't. They're just like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You can't have any more of a freaking no. They didn't want any part of it. So, but yeah, it was an amazing trip. And so we traveled out there. I'm gonna adjust my mic, man. I don't know what's going on here. I'm sitting here talking on this mic, and it's gradually falling. And every 5 seconds.
You're at Studio 540 right now, are you?
No, I'm actually at another gym. So typically what I do is, traveling, I'll stop in at a gym and just meet whoever, and I'll just park at the gym. Typically they'll have showers, all that. And so, as we traveled up the coast, especially for my wife, she didn't want to stay at a gym. So usually we'd either stay at state parks or RV parks or somewhere really nice. But sometimes we would like when we got to Oregon, the Oregon-Washington border, there are two brothers there called the Adamson brothers. And they have Nathan and Zach. And they have a gym up there. They're black belts under Rafael Lovato, and so junior. And so the jiu-jitsu there is amazing. There's only 6,000 people that live in the town. It's a town where, I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen Goonies?
Movie? Yeah, of course.
Like the 80s movie. So they filmed it there. It's a really cute, beautiful town. And so very New Englandish, and
interesting. I love that kind of town.
Yeah, it was great. So it was cool. So we hung out with them. They had an amazing, beautiful farm, and I just was teaching there, putting on seminars and all that. And it's cool because it's interesting that I was just talking to a buddy of mine. Oh shit! I was just talking to a buddy of mine about how when you travel to other gyms, especially after training at AOJ for so long, it's crazy. Like, the jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, but you learned a certain brand of jujitsu. You know, it's very much almost like kung fu movies where there's like this style and this style and this style. People don't really associate that with jujitsu, but it's there. You know, my style of jujitsu is going to be was very, very different from the Adamson brothers. Not better, not worse, you know, but just very different. You know, I am a Berimbolo guy. That's my main thing. I'm a De La Riva guy, and I play a lot of very technical lapel guard. And so all of that comes from, you know, from the brothers.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
that's what makes the sport so beautiful, you know.
Exactly. But when I got my brown belt, one of the, you know, I'm always, every time I got promoted, I always compete, and I've only gotten promoted after winning like Panzer Worlds. And so after I got my brown belt, I and really every belt, I look at my game, and I've always been like, okay, where is the weakness in my game? Where do I forget about where can I improve? Where do I need to improve? Because, well, yeah, and being and competing, you know, doesn't, you know, it robs you of the luxury of thinking that you're good. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like there is no quick. Oh God, every time I've gotten promoted and I think I'm great and I get to that next belt, I lose in the first round, you know, or the second round, whatever it is. It's like I become the white belt of that new belt.
I've heard you say that before. That's a great analogy, you know, because I recently got my black belt, and you know, like for me, it's like that struggle of, you know, you really believe in your jiu-jitsu, you really believe in, you're like, yeah, kind of deep down, you're like, yeah, I'm kind of a badass, a little bit of a badass, but then you go and you roll and you get, or you compete, and you learn real quick that you're like really the shittiest of the badasses. For me, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I know. It's crazy. It's humbling, man. It's very humbling. Yeah, and congratulations, man. It's a big deal.
Thank you. Thank you. And you too. Awesome. I know this is I congratulated you I think it was like 2 years ago, probably.
No, I got promoted last year at this time.
That's right.
So I've been a black belt for a year.
Man. What's that experience like, being so close? The thing is, your whole jiu-jitsu career is interesting because, like, you spend time at some people are like, oh, you know, that RVCA, and I'm like, Ruka. That's right.
Ruka,
yeah. You know, like, Ruka. So you spend a lot of time there too.
Yeah. And so, and the reason for that is Ruka is, it's, you know, I lived in an area where it's like a central hub where I was, you know, I had an electric bike, and I never would get in a car. Every day for me, success in life is all about freedom. And so for me, I always wanted to, I'm like, my goal is I don't want to get in a car. I just want to ride my bike. So I had a surf rack on my electric bike. I would ride a mile down the hill, go surf. I would ride a mile back up the hill and go to AOJ. And then I'd ride a mile from there. It was like a triangle, and I would go to Ruka. And Ruka is a private gym where a lot of UFC fighters train. And Jason Perillo's out of there. So yeah, it's a really, it's kind of been my family for the past decade. But one of the reasons that I trained so much there, I would say I almost spend 4 days a week, you know, there, and 2 days a week at AOJ, is because it affords me the opportunity to drill. And for me, my progress has all been about drilling. And I typically will drill for 2 to 3 hours a day. So I don't just go in there and drill for, you know, 30 minutes. And like I said, what I would do is at the beginning of each belt, I would just kind of analyze my game and say, you know, where do I need to improve here? And so, like, brown belt for me was all about improving my close guard, because I would get into competitions and I would play open guard. I'd play De La Riva, and guys would drop to their knees. You know, I played lapel, guys would drop to their knees. Well, what do you do when guys drop to their knees? You either play butterfly guard or you go to close guard. And so I worked on my close guard for, I would say, you know, close to a year and a half before it became the strongest part of my game.
Wow. Dedication.
So, yeah, I mean, what else are you going to do? You know, time is going to pass. I mean, you know, if it takes you 10 years to get a black belt, if you look at that mountain and you say, man, that's just too high, it's like time is going to pass no matter what. 10 years is going to go. So you might as well use it being productive, you know. And so for me, I'm just like, yeah, I just drill and work on techniques and work. And the cool thing about Ruka is we get some of the best, you know, we get some of the best black belts that come through, not only, you know, that are pure jiu-jitsu guys, but also MMA fighters and all that. So, you know, it's definitely cool because where I live and where you know, getting my black belt here, this is the new Brazil. This is the new Brazil. You don't go to Brazil anymore for great training. You come right here to Newport Beach. Yeah. You know, and so so yeah, I was very lucky that they opened the academy, you know, right when I was wanting to start jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's having those opportunities, right? But also, it's that age-old question. I'm always confused about where people are like, you know, you'll see these articles and they're like, "Is drilling that important?" I'm like, "What the fuck? Like, what the fuck?" You're like, would you go to a hockey and ask a hockey player, like, "Listen, you're going to win the Stanley Cup without ever practicing"? Like, it's the most unrealistic. Who are these journalists writing this foolishness?
That's nonsense. Really you know, if you look at all the way our roots for jiu-jitsu, and you know, from my research, trace back to samurai. And so you look at Musashi and he's like, you have to drill something until that's what Mushin mind is all about, is that you have to do something until you're no longer thinking about doing it. If I have to think about something in competition, and I don't care about sparring is irrelevant. I only care about competition because that's the mindset of the brothers.
Yeah.
You know, the brothers from day one are like, what's the purpose of sparring? You know, the purpose of sparring is to get ready for competition, you know, and so, you know, they're ruthless, man. They're like, I remember I've gotten a silver medal and they're like, so, you know what I mean? They're like, you're just lucky you didn't face that person in the first round. Because if you did, you wouldn't have a medal. Wow. You know, the only result that counts is gold, you know? Yeah, I've been told that. Yeah, so it was, you know.
How'd you take that?
It sucked. How did I take it? Like I won three matches.
Silver to me, like that's a huge accomplishment, right? But then just like that's, fuck, wow, that's a
not there, man. If you're a competitor, I mean, you don't get promoted until you win. That was for me. Even though I'm older, they always treated me like a competitor because I always competed. And because also I am people happen to know me within the community, and I think, and they know I roll other places. So they were like, you're definitely not getting promoted unless you win, you know? Yeah. And I appreciated that. Yeah. It made the journey more, you know, satisfying. Frustrating where I was angry, you know, at times where I was like, you know, yeah, I need to get promoted. I've been this belt for so long. I've been that belt for so long, but I'm frustrated with myself because I haven't won. And that just forced me to go back and drill and work on my game. And so, you know,
the full circle of greatness, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, drilling is everything, dude. Hoffa told me after he got his brown belt from purple belt, he's like, you know, the weakness in my game, in his game, was leg drags. And so he's like, I just grabbed gi and I just did leg drags until my legs would burn every single day until I would do thousands of reps. He said, and then I became the best leg dragger, you know?
It makes
sense. Like, it fucking makes sense, right?
So simple, right? Like, just to be great, like you just have to work hard, and how hard it is for so many of the general public, you know. It's like even for a guy like I can't compete but right away it's like I can't, right? You saying that, and like that mental mindset of like, that's again what's great. It's like mental and physical, everything combines to be one. And I wanted to ask you quickly about like the difference between, you've competed in adult, you competed in masters, you won masters. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, you always hear about that. You know, I'm 40 years old myself too, and you always hear about the big bad boogeyman in the masters division, and it just gets tougher and tougher. Is that true?
What's your question? Who gets tougher?
Masters, like, is the masters division? You always hear like the masters division is always a little bit tougher in the IBJJF. Whether it's
compared to what?
To like the regular adult division.
Dude, no, the adult division is just monsters, man. I mean, the adult division is where, you know, think about this, man. In the adult division, it's actually, I think, a flaw in the system of IBJJF. you could be going up against a blue belt. So let's say I'm 28, 29 years old, right? And I'm a blue belt. That means I've been training for what, 3 years, 2 years at the most, you know? And so I go into a competition in adult division and I pull the Rotolo brothers, right? So the Rotolo brothers are two twins that are from here, from Newport Beach. They've been training since they were 2 years old. They're black belts.
So hold on, you know, pick? You get in the same bracket? There's no ranking system for that, or
nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Yeah, and it's flawed because they're not blue belts, you know. and so that's where, you know, you're like, is the adult division compared to the, you know, the only time that really happens is when you get to the black belts, because then, you know, when you're competing at black belt. For me, my first black belt competition was Nogi Worlds last December. And, you know, I entered that tournament and I'm competing against guys not that have been training, you know, as long brown belt. They've been training 8 years, you know, they've been training for 20 years.
That's, I think, what I was trying to get across, I think.
No, that at the black belt division, it's freaking, especially now, because you have guys who are older that are competing at, in the masters division, like Sanjay.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, Sanjay is with the adults, so it becomes difficult to say that, you know, masters division is weaker than the adult division at black belt. You know, it's still, you know, you still have like the guys in the black belt master division have more
experience,
but the cardio, the strength, like cardio that those kids have. I'm 52 years old, man. You know.
Yeah. Well, are they the Rotolo brothers really blue belts still?
No, I think they just got their purple belts.
Jesus.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, I've been rolling with those kids since they were freaking 8 years old, you know, 7 years old. And even then, I mean, the first time I think I ever got toe holded was by Ty. And I was like, you little bastard. And the kid's like 9 years old, you know. It's like,
didn't they start training? I remember when because when we were doing our events back, I remember when Studio 540 opened. Who was it? Who's the surfer that was involved?
Joel Tudor.
Who else?
Joel Tudor.
Just Joel Tudor?
No, Joel. 540.
Rob, was there a Rob?
Yeah. So Rob Zepps. Here's the story. Rob Zepps started Studio 540, and he also funded. He was the financier for, and he's a great guy, great black belt under Gracie Baja. And really good friend of mine. I love the guy, but he also funded Metamoris. So his roots are deep in jiu-jitsu, but he recently sold Studio 540 to 3 of my friends. I'm actually training and teaching down there now. So Jake and Aaron and Andre now own Studio 540, and it's great, man. It's you know, it's definitely outside of AOJ. It's my favorite gym.
Nice, cool. Yeah, that's. I remember when they came, because I don't know what event it was, but I remember there was a big picture of all the athletes. I think it might have been Metamoris. They were all in the private jet together, and I was like, yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, with Rob, yeah,
that's
he's
cool.
A good guy, man. Such a dope guy.
We need those people in the sport.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It feels like right now, it's almost like a reset on everything. You know, a lot of gyms are going under it's almost like burning through the forest, and then there's going to have to be a regrowth. I'm not saying that, you know, we're not going back to zero. It's not like the whole forest got burnt down, but we definitely had we're having some clearing out for sure. Big changes are happening.
I had an instructor and club owner from Ottawa the other day on, and he was talking about the same thing. It's like, you know, right now it's going to be, that's a great analogy. And he kind of was just more like a little bit more raw. He was like, this is going to be survival of the fittest, you know, and it's, you know, I don't like to say that when I see people's gyms, you know, shutting down and stuff, because it sucks.
No, it's not survival of the fittest. It's, you know, it just happens to be, you know, where is your gym located? Are you in an area where, you know, they're cracking down and they're shutting down things? Are you in an area where, you know, is your gym high exposure? Are you on a street where everybody can see it? That's the big deal in America. Now, you know, that was a benefit, But now, if you have a gym that no one really can find or knows about, you're fine. But if you have a high exposure gym like Meraki up in Santa Monica, Kenny Florian's gym with Jason Hunt, or even AOJ, where you just everyone drives by, you got to put plastic on the windows or paper, and it's tough, man. I mean, even up in Oregon, it was tough, man. Those guys, because in America, it's not just the police, local police that will crack down, or the local health officials, but we also have federal OSHA, which is it's like our federal program for ensuring workplace safety. And they come through and they'll pop you in there. They don't care. Like your local policeman oftentimes will train in your gym and they'll give you a heads up. That happens everywhere now. That ain't happening with OSHA. And so they'll shut your ass down. They'll give you a $10,000-$15,000 fine. I mean, it's not survival of the fittest. It's just survival of the lucky.
Yeah. That's again, like I lived in Toronto, I lived in Calgary and Montreal and all these, big cities, I guess you would, still not massive, but here we are in Nova Scotia with like our whole province is less than 1 million people, like super small, so it's interesting because like people like, every day it's like, oh, one new case, or it's like a fucking lottery every day. It's like, guys, 10 or 15 planes arriving every day with people. Like, let's talk about we got to get back to real life, man. But I want to talk to you about that real quickly, and you're probably sick of talking about it, but I know we won't go too long. I don't want to take up a ton of your time. COVID, man, you spoke about it before. You've had it, your experience. Shitty.
Yeah, I got it. I got it very early on, and
I remember watching
it. It was before it was a real political issue. All of a sudden, like I said, in America, we like to make dumb shit political, and that all of a sudden, which was a virus, became political. You know what I mean? And so having it, it was gnarly, man. It's scary. It's because especially when I got it, there were so many unknowns. But I think even now, I mean, the reality is it's Russian roulette, because you have no idea how your body's going to react. I mean, typically the danger with COVID is not the disease itself; it's the immunological response. And so the way your body, you have this cascading effect of immunological, reacting to the virus, and that will start attacking your organs. So it's almost like an autoimmune system issue. It's just, it fucking sucks, man. Everybody's, especially in America, where, you get so many people are like, it's not real, it's not this and this. All of a sudden you get it, and it's like, because I've spoken to these people who were like, oh, I don't believe it, I'll be fine. All of a sudden they're not fine, because when that fever comes on and those chills come on and that exhaustion sets in because your body's not getting as much oxygen, you start to question whether or not you're going to have one of these cascading effects. I mean, results. And if you do, you're fucked.
That's terrifying. Really, that's terrifying.
It is terrifying because, again, it's Russian roulette. You don't know. You just don't know how it's going to be. And then if you have, you're asymptomatic or you get a really mild case, of course, there's just like with your belt, with sparring, you think that you're great. You're not great. You got lucky. You know what I mean? Go compete, The
worst thing I ever did was get a black belt. So now I got to wear it.
Oh, God. I know.
You wear it with pride until you're like, I'm going to get my ass kicked.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. So anyways, we talked a little bit about the whole van thing. And so I finished the van, and my wife and I jumped in the van, and we traveled for like 3 months. And just hit gyms, where I thought it was cool, where there were not many. I stayed out of cities. I didn't go into Portland or anything like that, but just small. And but it was really the van life is. I love it, man. It suits me. I don't ever want to live in a house again, ever. I love it. I'm about to sell this one and buy a brand new Sprinter, because this one I got was a few years old, and I'm going to do a brand new one. And we're going to live in that and travel all the way up to Maine. I'd love to come to Nova Scotia, but I'm sure no one's going to be allowed in there.
When are you coming? When's the plan?
I'm kind of thinking we're going to come. Probably like the first couple weeks of January, and so start heading up there. Probably be up there like February. Maybe something changes. I don't know.
our events booked. Well, we were talking about that. I think we might be able to get you in an essential worker or something.
That'd be cool.
Or something. But
the
I think
problem with that is if I'm in the van, then I can't really leave my wife, so it's like I'd have to, it just makes it difficult, with the whole, if everything was open and we could get her in easily, then I would be there in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Well, if not, I'm sure I gotta say Maine. It's interesting because Maine is a cool spot. Like you spent time up there before. I know that. What do you like? What's the difference? Do you find like New England and Maine area is so different compared to the West Coast, but it still has that kind of cool. It's almost like a snobby relaxation or something.
Yeah. It's living on the East Coast, living in Florida. Florida is very different than Maine. But I dug it, man. I thought it was cool, man. Anytime I can be near the water, I tend to be pretty happy. So I love it. I could live. Surf's good up there. I know surf's good in Nova Scotia. I know it gets really good.
It is. They say I always heard this growing up here, but it's the best winter surfing in the world here.
Oh, I can't wait to try it. I can't wait to surf one day. I'm sure. Yeah, I know it gets really, really good.
I'm not sure what it is. But
and then after that, I think what we're going to do is we're going to sell that van and then move to Europe. And
nice.
Yeah, our daughter's in London, so we want to, we're going to have grandkids soon. So
makes sense.
Yeah, and so I want to do van life and travel around Portugal and Spain and France and surf and just kind of live the best life I can, and but I'm excited to I really want to I only have like one more competition I think that I really want to do, and that's Europeans. So, yeah, I want to do Europeans. I've done everything else. I've done every other tournament. So I'm really stoked to do that. But other than that, I'm an author, and I've got a sci-fi series that's coming out, and for like pre-promotion because of all COVID, my agent and I decided to release it on audiobook. And so if people want to check it out, they can, it's called ARC Zero, ARC0, and it's on any podcast medium like iTunes or Spotify or SoundCloud or anything like that. And yeah. So that the response to that is amazing. And so, yeah, it's been really cool. I've been doing that. And I also I shut down. I had my own podcast that was based on fitness called Notice B. Yeah. But once I started getting ready to release the book, I partnered with a really prestigious sci-fi like literary journal. It's almost kind of like art, and it's got really cool art and short stories, and it's called Infinite Worlds Magazine. And so we have our own podcast. I'm a co-host on that. And so yeah, so it's been a busy transition. It's interesting because I was in this transition period after I got my black belt. My goal, even before I got my black belt, when I talked to Hoffa about it, was I want to do Nogi Worlds. I started out my career, my competition career at Nogi Worlds when I was a white belt, and I'm like, I want to compete as a black belt. And that was kind of the impetus for me getting my black belt. And I'd already won pans at brown belt, and he was like, if you don't win, I'm taking this back. He said, this is a very temporary belt for you. I'm letting you know that right now.
No pressure at all.
No pressure at all. Believe me, I was thinking that, man, when I was when I was walking onto that mat for that first, oh my gosh, I love competition because I love to watch how my mind reacts, to be the observer and to just be like, oh, my mind's starting to freak out now. My mind's saying, hey, just fake an injury and get the hell off this mat. Hey, you don't want to be here. You don't need to do this. Why are you putting yourself through this? You don't need this. There's no money at stake here. And so I love to watch that, to be that observer, because then that really goes back to Musashi with the samurai training and the drilling and everything, where it's like, forget your mind. Mushin mind is the concept, and I learned about Mushin mind from Hoffa, and so Mushin mind, it means mind without mind, a Japanese saying, and so stepping onto the mat for that first tournament, I was just like, yeah, my mind's freaking out, but I'm not. You know what I mean? You're not your thoughts, and so that's probably one of the coolest things for me about martial arts and jiu-jitsu is that training and the forming of the mental discipline that you can carry forth into all spheres of your life.
Yeah, very, very well said. I kind of got mesmerized listening to you there for a second, man, because it's for me, like I love that motivation because that's something, again, I struggle with so much, man, when I compete, like my mental side. And I'm always aware of like when I see athletes like yourself and others who compete at like a high level and win at a high level, like it takes that, like I can go out and roll in the club like it's nothing, but that's bullshit. That means nothing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because you're supposed to have fun there and you're supposed to enjoy it there.
And you're supposed to lose there. And you're supposed
Yeah.
to lose there because that's where, if you're not losing in sparring, you're not training with the right people. At AOJ, I train with the best kids in the world. Jonathan Alvis, Tynan Dalbra. I train with all these kids and I get smoked. So, but that's what helps me. But yeah, you're right. It's that mental game, you know.
Yeah, it's important, man. What do you think very quickly about the leg locks and now IBJJF?
Oh, I was so excited to see that, man. I'm so pumped. It's been so long coming. I mean, talk about being behind the times. I started talking about that like 2-3 years ago, where I was like, this is becoming irrelevant here, you know. So yeah, I train leg attacks. I actually started really focusing on leg attacks, going to 10th Planet and training with Eddie Bravo.
Yeah.
And then kind of bringing that back to AOJ and working with, you know, one of my professors there, Nick Boley. And so yeah, it's cool. It's a journey. But the scary thing about it is you really do have to make sure you're training with high level people who understand that, you know, the difference between me cranking your arm and me cranking your knee is night and day. It's going to take me a whole lot of effort to freaking break your arm. It's not going to take me very much to tear your entire ACL, LCL, and tear it all apart. It takes like an inch or two. It takes an inch or two. Whereas it's going to take me almost, you know, 8 inches of pulling on your arm for a while before it breaks.
Yeah, that's fuck. I don't know, man. Like, to me, I love leg entanglements. I love leg locks. It's changed my jiu-jitsu incredibly. But it's like, to me, it's like you just said, like you can really get hurt if you're not training with people that know what they're doing and people that you can trust. And it'd be interesting how, like, are they going to switch their officials? Are they going to switch? Like, are they going to have more leg lock kind of official base? Because like, or are they just going to let people rip and reap? Like, because you gotta let them reap.
I
guess you do. Yeah,
you have to. If you're going to allow leg locks, you got to allow, you know, heel hooks. You got to allow reaping.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I don't know, but you know, a caveat to that is that Hoffa was always very reluctant to teach leg attacks because his philosophy was, as soon as you start attacking my legs, I'm going to take your back. Mm-hmm. He's like, I will use a leg attack like a heel hook against Cobrinha at ADCC when he won. He's like, I'll use that to advance my positions, but no one's tapping at the highest levels. Yeah. To he's like, I've never tapped to a leg attack any kind. He's like, and when someone goes for the leg, they're going to give the back. So, you know, as we had a period where, and this is how jiu-jitsu always is, right? Is that we have a period of advancement for a certain technique. It takes, you know, the whole jiu-jitsu community by storm, like Berimbolo. A year or two later, everybody starts learning how to counteract it. And then it becomes nullified. The Berimbolo, what's interesting about that is now it's having a resurgence because the techniques are becoming tighter and tighter. The way that I even teach Berimbolo seminars is very different than the way I even learned it. The details are very, very specific and very minute, but those changes are absolutely change everything about the Berimbolo. So, you know, it's like, yeah, at first leg attacks, you know, the Eddie Wolverine, Gordon Ryan, all of that whole thing was like, holy moly. But then they started getting nullified, and that's going to happen. Leg attacks are not, you know, they're not the great end all be all of all techniques.
Yeah, big time.
There is nothing that is. Everything, there's a counter to everything.
Well, Rafa versus Gary Tonin, that'd be a good match.
I know. Hoffa was so close. You know, I was commentating for EBI for a while, and we were very close to getting Hoffa to come in and do EBI, but at the end of the day, he was at the end of his career and was just like, I got to focus on my family. I want to focus on. He's like, I've accomplished all my goals. EBI has never been a goal for me. Yeah, the money's good, but he's like,
I have like 3,000 students. It's all right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like in an online program, and just for him, it was about the family though. He's like, this is my next goal in life. So you have to respect that. Yeah.
Big time. What have you been following the UFC? Obviously you're probably sick of it, man. Like you've been,
I follow it.
The MMA world, right? But,
yeah. I mean, I follow it, and Dana and I talk, and this fight, but it's there was a golden for me. There was when I did the book on the UFC, Into the Cage, Rise of UFC Nation. That for me was the real golden era of UFC. That was Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre, Chris Weidman. I mean, Uriah Faber, Jose Aldo, Hannah Brow. You know what I mean? Anderson. It was amazing. Cain Velasquez, JDS. Now there are fighters that I'm like, holy shit, that guy's amazing, and I love to watch. Obviously, I'm one of my best friends is Cheeto Vera, and he just fought Sean O'Malley.
Ask you about that.
Yeah, and so it's I follow it. I just am not I've never been like a real sports guy. The only sport I ever even I'm watching right now is IBJJF. I only like to watch things that I do, and I don't fight MMA. But it doesn't mean I won't put on a fight. I'll put on a fight almost every time there's a fight on. I'm just not like on it like I was,
It's funny because people say, like, here I am a promoter, we're promoting events here, and I think that the sport's only getting bigger, but it's anybody who knows anything about the sport and you talk to them about it, they're the same way. They're like, I'll put the fight on, but fuck, I don't know half the guy who they are, like the guys, the girls, because there's so many events, it's a lot to keep up with, right? And but cool to see how, like, and where obviously everybody's gotten the sport and where it's came and where it is to now. And Cheeto, he's a guy like, man, like going into that fight, I love that guy for one. He's scrappy, super exciting, but the shit talked and then he won, and just the way it all went down, man. I think it's
crazy, huh? Yeah, I was so happy for him. Yeah. It's nerve-wracking, man, when you have friends who that are fighting, and I hate it. I hate watching my friends fight.
I bet. But the workings of that person, and what's on stake.
Yeah. I mean, Cheeto, like I said, we're very close. We've traveled to Ecuador together. We train together. We're very close. We surf together all the time. He's a good dude.
Yeah, he is. One quick last question. Someone just asked, and we didn't cover it. So many people talk about your tooth. It's a surfing accident, everybody. Is that right? I think it's a surfing accident.
It's a surfing accident. That's right. I was surfing big waves, like I want to say like almost 2011, right before AOJ opened, and my board, really big waves. They call it tombstoning, where I was inside of a barrel closed out, pushed me to the bottom of the ocean. I couldn't breathe, so I kicked off my leash to come up. And as I kicked off my leash, my board was like being held like a tombstone, and then it released, and I could feel it slingshotting back to me, but I needed to breathe. And so I took a breath, and when I took a breath, the pintail hit me right on the bottom of the tooth, because I put my head back, and it sheared my tooth in half. So the back part came off, and then I got implant. First I got a crown that got infected. Then they put an implant in. Then the implant got infected.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wear. I had perfect teeth, man. I mean, my teeth are, they were fucking perfect. And so my mom, and that's from my mom, she's like, I can't believe I put braces on your teeth and this and that.
There you go.
But I couldn't wear a flipper. I couldn't wear a fake tooth when the implant was infected. And so over like 6 months, the doctor kept putting me on antibiotics. My face was numb. I couldn't taste food, but he kept saying, just stay on the antibiotics. We're going to ride it out, and it's going to be fine. Dana and I started screwing around doing video blogs, and he was calling me the tooth. And next thing you know, it just blew up. I had that grappling match with Joe Lazone. And so, you know, then I went in finally after 6 months. The periodontist and endodontist, they were like, okay, we're going to take this out and clean it out, because obviously it's not going to get cleaned, you know, it's not going to get better. And then we're going to put it in next week. And I'm like, you're going to take this fucker out and you're never putting anything in my mouth again.
Yeah, fuck the pain and bullshit. Oh, teeth are an thing, man. That's interesting. Sorry to your mom for that. It's terrible, the braces and all.
Yeah.
Well, I won't take up too much of your time. I know you're busy, and I know you're probably getting ready to teach, but I do want to thank you so much for joining us and taking the time out of your day for chatting and spreading the good vibes, man. You're a guy I've followed forever. I bug your ass forever about doing stuff, so I appreciate it.
I'm honored to be on, man. I really appreciate it. I'll come on again. So just let me know. I'll be traveling, but let's do it again. And I want to come up and commentate. So that would be awesome.
I'd love that. We'll get you up here, do a seminar, and have a good time.
That would be awesome, man. I appreciate it, brother.
Okay, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Nick the Tooth. See you, buddy.
Later, brother.
Fantastic episode, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. Episode 124 in the books. Again, sponsored by our friends at Maritime Madness, home of the One Chunk Challenge. Use the code FLA10 to save 10% and receive shipping for free in Canada over $35. Again, thanks to our guests, Natali Fagan and Nick the Tooth. Check this episode online. Available everywhere. Subscribe, share, and like, and be kind. Make sure you pre-order that pay-per-view, folks, as well. Available FightLeagueAtlantic.com. Head on over there. Pre-order a pay-per-view to be invited and not invited. Put in for a pay. Fuck. I'm losing it. I'm talking too much. Put in for an FLA swag pack. We'll see you tomorrow. No, tomorrow's Happy Thanksgiving, folks. I forgot about that. I'm really losing it. We'll be back Tuesday with Calvin Cater and Tyson Chartier. See you then.